Hi guys, it's Mrs. Bottemiller here today with your lesson about making movies while you're reading. The other day I was watching a show about eyewitnesses, and they were talking about how unreliable eyewitnesses are. So they see someone doing a crime, and later they're called in by the police to look at a lineup of people to try and identify the person who committed the crime. But often people choose the wrong person, and the wrong person ends up being convicted of a crime. Right? It made me remember a video I had watched a couple of years ago about this video proved kind of how bad we are at paying attention to details. Now, some of you might have seen this video in Mrs. Nelson's sixth grade science class. So if you have, bear again, watch, enjoy, you know what's coming. But if you don't, I want you to watch the video and follow the directions as you're watching.
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count? The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla?
So did you see the gorilla, or did you totally miss it? Sometimes missing details matter, right? It is a big deal. When you're reading, sometimes you miss details. Have you ever been reading and you miss a detail, maybe something important, and then you keep reading and you realize, wait a minute, I don't know what the heck was going on. Why did this character do this? So let's say you're reading, for example, and somebody comes and knocks on the main character's door, and you really aren't paying much attention, and so you think the guy looks like this. Right? Oh, knocked on the door. Hello. Right? But really, because you weren't reading carefully and you missed the description of the character, this is who knocks on the character's door. Makes a difference, right? It seems pretty important. So details and paying attention to details are important, and one way to do that is to visualize. So we create mental images in our head as we read, and we use our background knowledge to try and help us develop those images, because it's more fun to read when you can actually see it in your head. So that's called visualizing. So we're going to go back to yesterday's story, the one actually we started on Monday, called the scholarship jacket. Okay. So we had left off where the girl, Martha, had thought she was going to get the scholarship jacket, had earned it, gotten great grades, and then she heard the teachers arguing over whether or not she was going to get it. So that's where we're picking up, and we're going to try to make movies and pay attention to details in our head. So the pounding in my ears drowned out the rest of the words. Only a word here and there filtered through, right? So that's the teachers arguing. Martha is Mexican, resign, won't do it. Mr. Schmidt came rushing out. Luckily for me, he went down the opposite way toward the auditorium, so he didn't see me. Shaking, I waited a few minutes and went in and grabbed my bag and fled from the room. Mr. Boone looked up when I came in, but he didn't say anything. To this day, I don't remember if I got in trouble in PE for being late or how I made it through the rest of the afternoon. I went home very sad and cried into my pillow that night so my grandmother wouldn't hear me. It seemed a cruel coincidence that I had overheard that conversation. The next day, when the principal called me in the office, I knew what it would be about. He looked uncomfortable and unhappy. I decided I wasn't going to make it easier for him, and so I looked him straight in the eye. He looked away and fidgeted with the papers on his desk. Martha, he said, there's been a change of policy this year regarding the scholarship jacket, and you know, it's always been free. He cleared his throat and continued, this year the board decided to charge $15, which still won't cover the complete cost of the jacket. I stared at him in shock, and a small sound of dismay escaped my throat. I hadn't expected this. He still avoided looking in my eyes. Now, if I'm really paying attention to details, I can see that this conversation is very uncomfortable for this principal. Probably because he knows it's what he's saying is wrong. He's not doing the right thing. Look at the things that I highlighted in pink. He looks uncomfortable and unhappy. He looked away and fidgeted with his papers on his desk. His behavior is showing that he's nervous. He cleared his throat and continued. He avoided eye contact. All this tells me that he knows what he is doing is wrong, but he, for whatever reason, does it anyway. I might miss those details if I wasn't reading kind of carefully or paying attention to his behavior. Now, the story continues with the wrap up of the conversation and then with Martha going home. So here's my challenge to you. As we are reading these last 2 pages, I want you to try making a movie in your head, and I want you to pay particular attention or create the movie based on the details you note about Martha and her appearance and how she handles this situation, okay? So if you're unable to pay the $15 for the jacket, it'll be given to the next one in line. Standing with all the dignity I could muster, I said, I'll speak to my grandfather about it and let you know tomorrow. I cried on the walk home from the bus stop. The dirt road was a 1/4 mile from the highway, so by the time I got home, my eyes were red and puffy. Where's Grandpa? I asked Grandma, looking down at the floor so she couldn't ask me why I had been crying. She was sewing on a quilt and didn't look up. I think he's out back working in the bean field. I went outside and looked at the fields, and there he was. I could see him walking between the rows, his body bent over the little plants, hoe in hand. I walked slowly out to him, trying to think of how I could best ask him for the money. There was a cool breeze blowing and the smell of mesquite in the air, but I didn't appreciate it. I kicked at a dirt clod. I wanted that jacket so much. It was more than just being valedictorian, giving a little thank you speech for the jacket on graduation night. It represented 8 years of hard work and expectation. I knew I had to be honest with Grandpa. It was my only chance. Now, can you see some details telling us how Martha was feeling? First, she's crying on the way home. We see that. Her eyes are red and puffy. She looks down when she talks to her grandma, so her grandmother can't see that she's crying, right? As she's walking, she kicks dirt, still thinking about that jacket, right? This is really on her mind. So we can get a visual of Martha doing this as she's going to talk to her grandpa and how upset she is over not getting this jacket, because it's not right that she's not getting it. The movie in my head is more vivid when I pay attention to those details. We'll continue the story next time in the next lesson. There are times when we're reading and we are just putting our eyes across the page without making mental movies. It's like the book stops working for you. You stop engaging with it, right? So when this happens to you guys, note that it's happening. When you're not really experiencing the book, stop. Go back a little bit, reread, and try to get that movie rolling again, right? If you look for details, you can see the nervous principal, or you might see the guy knocking at the door, not as a handsome guy, but as a scary, murderous clown, right? Makes a difference. So today, as you go off and do your reading work, let's try that again. Let's get to the right side. There we go. As you go off to do your reading work, you are going to think about your reading. Maybe you're thinking about creating those mental pictures and movies in your head. You can record your thoughts as you go in many ways. You can do the Post-it notes. You can do a free write. You can create a web, some sort of reader's web. You can list. You can sketch. Sketching would be a great one for this, because if you see a picture in your head, you could just draw what you're seeing, the character or the plot, the setting, I mean. Maybe you're going to create a timeline of the events in your story. We just want to see that you are thinking as you are reading. That's the purpose of the reader's journal. So go off, do your writing in your notebook, use Post-it notes, use an electronic version of this to record your thoughts. Remember, every journal page should have this information as your heading. And enjoy today's reading. Off you go.